Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it opens possibility, because in Italy, probably 50 years ago, the story would go, Jonathan becomes a father, and that's the story, and that's it. But today, in another country, it could have a very different kind of story. That is where the story elements come in for me, because you add culture, where are they living, which kind of age, how is the family, what is the background? Because one thing is if the family of Jonathan is very rich, and so they say, don't worry, my boy, you go do your things, we will have a nanny, I will take care of it. Another thing is if a working class and they say to him, you are an idiot, you put yourself in trouble, and now you pay and do your things. So everything comes together then on the different level, which is the character brief, which you put all the backstory, all the things there.
Could be the kid's story when he realizes that he
Yes.
destroyed his father's dreams.
Yes,
by being born.
Yes, you can. Yeah, you can move it around how you know. Yeah.
It sounds like at this point, I mean, it sounds very interesting. I like this methodology. I think I can relate to how my students tend to get it cuts through the clutter, I think, this method. So students find it in a way easy to write the character profile because it's easy to get creative. It's easy to just fill your character with all these details. And I think oftentimes students come in with they're very visual, right? Most of them are very visual thinkers. So they come in seeing the scene, they see the character, they see it down to what clothes they wear, but they lose sight of the main drive of the story. So I think a methodology like this really sort of clears the clutter, kind of brings it back to the core of what, and to me, the understanding of this, the core paradox, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds a lot to me that how we'll talk about in terms of a character's spine and the inner conflict, right? So you have this tension that's within the character, and if a student came with just a character and no story, or even if a student came with already a story in mind, a lot of times I think they get lost in, as they take a few steps forward in the story or in developing a character with a view towards a story they haven't quite solidified, I think usually they get lost. So it's helpful to have perhaps a methodology or framework that they can come back to and kind of query and test against the story they want to tell. So I mean, listening to that, the discussion that it sounds like maybe at this point, once you start developing a core and a paradox, you also test it against the premise. So I guess my question to the student would be, then what is the story trying to tell? Because you're right, with this Jonathan story, you can go many different ways. So then the question would be, now it's time to pull out the premise and test it against that.
Yeah.
And based on what you want to tell, based on the story you want to tell, you start to make some decisions.
Yeah. That is exactly what is happening. What happens? That is exactly what happens, because it doesn't stop at the stage of creating the character. It is always tested also on, what story, which theme, why, what do you want to tell, how to better say this thing. And the premise is fundamental, because otherwise it dies. Basically, it is useless. You need to have
and
the
see how
testing.
you would go back and forth.
A lot, yeah. And they, according to the premise, then you go back to the core and paradox, you see if it works for that kind of story, you twist it a little bit, you polish it a little bit, and then what happens generally is that by the time they, in a way, it's like we work story and character up here. By the time they start to write the character profile, they have a very much better understanding of what they need to be to help them tell the story. So there is a little bit less backstory, because they just write the backstory that really is needed. There is a little bit more of the defined kind of, okay, this culture actually helps me in if I situate the person there because of that characteristics, and all that kind of the social, cultural, psychological, other elements that they bring in. Then they have a rationale, if you want. They are there for a reason. They're not just because they are enamored of a culture or enamored of the time, and yes, it just makes it simpler.
I can imagine that the technique, it sounds really interesting, that obviously the way, the direction that it works the way that you're describing, Romana, is that you're building up from that core to discover who the character is, what the stories are that they could be in, and all those sorts of things. But it could also be used the other way.
Absolutely.
If there are some of those elements already and things are getting unwieldy, and I think we've all read character biographies that are just way too complex and incoherent. It's a way of sort of refining things as well, to kind of go, what's the core, what's the paradox of this character, what are those inner drivers, and just refining things so that you can kind of
Yes. This happens a lot. This happens a lot with the second year, when they come sometimes with the first draft, and at that point they know a lot of the things that are basic and needed to be done. So they come with the first draft, and the first draft is always the time in which we go back to the character and say, okay, I mean, why this scene is like that? Do you think it works? Is the core and the paradox there? Actually, can you do more with it? Can you, so yes, it is always a conversation. It's always an oscillation of going back and forwards, reverse engineering, going back and you absolutely spot on. Yes.
Yeah.
In the technique, is there an assumption that the paradox will be resolved?
No, it is not. It could be, but what I say to them is, look, think it that way. The paradox is not resolved, but definitely because they are two fundamental elements of the character, they are there. However, the manifestation of the paradox can be resolved. Meaning, do you remember the priest that is violent, and maybe he is violent with his community, and maybe he starts to realize that this is happening and it is really bad and he has to solve it, and maybe he goes to counselor, I don't know, and find out a way to manage his violent core paradox in a different way. So yes, of course. I mean, a manifestation of it can be solved. Yes.
An area that I'm really interested in, because I work in TV a lot of TV characters just don't change. Like, I'm rewatching The Sopranos at the moment. It's marvelous watching how Tony Soprano just doesn't change.
No, but that's the beauty.
Falling into the same paradox, and he has a wonderful paradox, as a character.
Yes.
But I'm interested in seeing whether or not this approach could work with characters who don't emotionally change.
Yes, it does. It does,
do
because
they still have a paradox, or do their values just? I don't know.
From this corner, what I can see is that it does, in the sense that if you use the paradox to create situations, manifestation, right, of the paradox, well, you can go forever, because the paradox is always at work, in clash with the core. So in every different situation in life, it will react, and it will create a reaction, the core, and then comes in the paradox and can enhance it, intensify it, or destroy it altogether, hinder it, create problems to it. And that kind of mix of reaction, that can be already a story to be resolved. So yes, from my corner, yes, it helps.
Have you explored whether either the core or the paradox has any relationship to notions of character flaw, or are they separate in your mind?
To me, they are not separate, in the sense that, of course, the paradox can have to do with a flaw, because any kind of paradox you put there can become an element of flow. I mean, if I am, let's say, the core is very simple, rational, okay? Hi, Gabriel, welcome. And,
hey, how are you?
Fine. And if the core is rational, simple, right? The character in front of something react in a rational way, they speak in a rational way, leave the attitude aside because can be nervous or lay down, back and stuff. And then you have a paradox that is caring. Let's say caring as a paradox. Well, that could be intensifying the rationality, because they're caring, they're very rational in their life, and they make sure they take care of their family in a rational way, they solve all the problems in a very coherent way. But it can become intensifying. It can clash with it. Imagine that you know you have to take a decision for your family because it's right, but it will create pain to your child, but you know it's right, and you're caring, and you just cannot do it. You just cannot do it because of caring. It's coming in, you love them, you cannot do it. And it ruins the family economy, let's say, or all sort of things. So in that case, the combination of how the flow comes in can create a list of flow of that hinder or intensify behavior of the character. So yes, in a way, those kind of two things are there in exactly to do that, to create things for you. Depends how you use them, how you push them this way or that way. Because if you think a minute, any quality we have, if you push it one way or another, even as human being, it can be detrimental.
Yes.
So
Often a character flaw is a positive quality that's gone too far.
yes. So yeah, that is the.
So the
Okay.
methodology is, I mean, it sounds like it is a way of avoiding one of the problems that students have, which is they take the first thing that comes in their mind and stick. So it's a way of, okay, let's look at it from a bunch of different angles. Don't commit to this right away. Let's play with it.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
As I'm sitting here, I'm thinking of a colleague recently pointed out to me, are you familiar with the historical figure of George Washington?
Yes.
Anybody?
Yes, of course.
Who led the American Revolution and defeated the British ultimately. You know what he wanted all his life?
No.
He wanted to be English.
Oh, there you go. Oh my God, that would be such an amazing story to tell.
He wanted to be accepted as an Englishman, and they
Yes.
wouldn't let him because
And
he wasn't
so,
born.
yeah, you see?
So
Yeah,
you see what happened?
of
You
course.
see, you got to let people be English if they want to be English.
Oh my God, come on.
Yes, it's not fair. You get
That's
in
not at the
trouble.
moment.
I will not comment. I'm Italian and British, so
Very quiet. Yeah. Between you and
Okay.
me, it's not. Don't record. Don't let anybody see this recording. That's
nobody. Okay.
All right.
Well, I think that this is it for today. I really thank you. You've been very helpful to me. And if you want to discuss this further, I'm here, of course. All right.